Chapter 34, The Lesson Interrupted. The moment the trial of Richard Markham was concluded, Sir Rupert Harborough and Mr. Chichester bade a cold and hasty adieu to Mr. Talbot and left the court altogether. They wended their way up the Old Bailey, turned into Newgate Street, and thence proceeded down Butcher Hall Lane towards Bartholomew Close, for in that large dreary square did Mr. Chichester now occupy a cheap lodging. This lodging consisted of a couple of small and ill-furnished rooms on the second floor. When the two gentlemen arrived, it was past 5 o'clock, for the trial had lasted the entire day, and a dirty cloth was laid for dinner in the front apartment. Black-handled knives and forks, a pepper-box, pewter salt-cellar and mustard-pot, and common white plates with a blue edge constituted the service. The dinner itself was equally humble, consisting of mutton chops and potatoes, flanked by a pot of porter. The baronet and the fashionable gentleman took their seats in silence, and partook of the meal without much appetite. There was a damp upon their spirits. They were not so utterly depraved as to be altogether unmindful of the detestable part they had played towards Markham, and their own affairs were moreover in a desperate condition. A slipshod, dirty, familiar girl cleared away the dinner things, and the gentlemen then took to gin and water and cigars. For some minutes they smoked in silence, till at length the baronet, stamping his foot impatiently upon the floor, exclaimed, "Chichester, is nothing to be done?" "I really don't know," answered the individual. "You heard how deucedly I got exposed today in the witness box, and after that I should not dare show up at the West End for weeks and months to come, even if the sheriff's officers weren't looking out for me." "Well, something must be done," observed the baronet. "Here am I, playing at hide-and-seek as well as you. All my horses sold, my furniture seized, my carriages made away with, my plate pawned, and not a guinea left." "What should you say to a trip into the country?" demanded Chichester after a pause. "London is too hot for both of us, at least for the present. Indeed, my surprise is that we were not arrested on those infernal bills coming out of the court. But as I was saying, a trip into the country might do more good. To be sure, this is no time for the watering places. We might, however, pay a visit to Hastings, Bath, and Cheltenham on a venture." "And what could we do for ourselves there?" "Why, pick up flats, to be sure. You know, Chichester, that I am not able to work the cards and dice as you can. Then you must learn as I did. And who will teach me?" "Why, myself, to be sure. Could you have a better master than Arthur Chichester?" "But it would take so long to understand all these maneuvers. I should never have the patience." "Oh, nonsense, Harborough. Come, what do you say? 3 days' practice and we'll be off." "But the money, the funds to move with," cried the baronet impatiently. "I am literally reduced to my last guinea." "Oh, as for that," returned Chichester, "I will engage to get a 20-pound note from my father tomorrow, and with that supply we can safely start off on our expedition." "Well, if you can rely upon doing this," observed the baronet, "we will put your plan into execution. So let us lose no time, but please give me my first lesson." "That's what I call business," cried Chichester, rising from his seat and drawing the curtains, while the baronet lighted the 2 tallow candles that adorned the wooden mantelpiece. Chichester locked the door of the room and then produced from his writing desk the necessary implements of a gambler, packs of cards, dice boxes, and dice. Having reseated himself, he took up a pair of dice and a box and said, "Now, my dear fellow, be a good boy and learn your lesson well. You will soon meet with your reward." It's a little bit condescending, isn't he? "I am all attention," observed the baronet. "In the first place, I shall show you how to secure," continued Chichester, "and as you know the game of hazard well enough, I need say but little more on that head. There are 2 ways of securing. The first is to hold one of the dice between the 4 and middle fingers, or the middle and 3rd fingers against the side of the box, so that one finger must cover the top of the dice. In this way, you see." "I understand," said the baronet, attentively watching the proceedings of his companion, who, by certain clever and adroit manipulations with the dice box, illustrated his descriptions. "This system is not so easy as the second, which I shall presently show you," continued Chichester, "because the die must be kept cleverly inside the box so as not to be seen. The second way of securing is by taking hold of one of the dice by the little finger and keeping it firm against the palm of the hand while you shake the box, so as to be able to drop it skillfully upon the table at the proper moment, when it will seem as if it came from the box along with the other. This is the way." So he's teaching him how to cheat at dice, not how to play dice. Man, these guys are bad news. "I shall soon understand," said the baronet. "Of course, by being able to secure one die, you can make it turn up any number you choose." When you mean to practice this dodge, continued Chichester, call 5 for a main, because you can secure the 4, and there is only the 6 on the loose die that can come up against you. If you have a good stake to get, secure a 5 every time, because when the main is 6 to 5, or 7 to 5, or 8 to 5, or 9 to 5, or 10 to 5, you must win every time, because you can't possibly throw out while time 5 is secured. But will not the ear tell the pigeon that there is only one die rattling in the box? Demanded the baronet. Look at this box, exclaimed Chichester. It has 2 rims cut inside near the bottom. The one die shaking against them produces the sound of 2 dice. And this is the dude they believed instead of Richard. Ugh. Are there not some peculiarities about these dice? Asked Sir Rupert, pointing to a pair which Chichester had placed apart from the rest. Yes, those are unequal dice, and are so well made that no one, except a regular sharper, could detect them. They are bigger at one end than the other, and the 6s are placed on the smaller squares, because you must play with these dice to win upon high numbers, which are on those smaller squares. The dice will, in 9 cases out of 10, fall upon the larger squares, and thus show the high numbers uppermost. And these dice? Inquired the baronet, taking up 2 others. Loaded ones, replied Chichester. These are to throw low, and so the 2 sides which have got 4 and 5 on them are loaded. How are they loaded? Asked Sir Rupert. The corner pip of the 4 side next to the 5 side is bored very nearly to a certain depth. The same is done on the corner pip of the 5 side adjoining the 4 side. Thus the 2 holes so bored meet each other at right angles. One of the holes is covered over with some strong cement. Quicksilver is then poured in, and the other hole is covered over with the cement. The spots are blackened, and your dice are ready for use. This being intended to throw low, you must call a main and take the odds accordingly. Well, said the baronet, I think I can now safely say that I know enough of the elements of your grammar to enable me to practice myself. Let us devote half an hour to the working of cards. The ways of managing the cards, said Chichester, taking up a pack and shuffling them, are numerous. These, for instance, are longs and shorts. All the cards above the 8 are the least thing longer than those below it. I have a machine which was invented on purpose to cut them accordingly. Nothing under an 8 can be cut, you see, with these cards lengthwise. And that pack so carefully wrapped up in the paper? Oh, these are my concaves and convexes. All from the 2 to the 7 are cut concave, and all from the 8 to the king are cut convex. By cutting the pack breadthways, a convex card is cut. By cutting it lengthways, a concave one is secured. So there's tiny little differences in how the cards themselves are actually shaped, which changes what cards get drawn from it. This guy's bad news. I have often heard of the bridge, said Sir Rupert. What does that mean? Oh, the bridge is simply and easily done, replied Chichester, shuffling the pack which he had in his hand. You see, it is nothing but slightly curving a card and introducing it carelessly into the pack. Shuffle the cards as your opponent will. You are sure to be able to cut the bridged one. I could do that without study, observed Sir Rupert Harborough. Is my initiation now complete? There are several other schemes with the cards, answered Chichester, but I think that I have taught you enough for this evening. One famous device, however, must not be forgotten. You have heard of the way in which Lord de Roos lately attempted to cheat his noble companion at the club? The plan practiced by him is called sauter la coup, and enables the dealer to do what he chooses with one particular card, which of course he has selected for his purpose. Now look how it is done, for I can better show practically than explain verbally. Scarcely was this portion of the lesson accomplished when steps were heard ascending the stairs, and immediately afterwards a heavy fist knocked with more violence than courtesy at the parlor door. Who is it? The baronet and Chichester both turned pale. They can't have found us out here, murmured the one to the other in a hoarse and tremulous tone. What shall we do? We must open, happen what will. Chichester unlocked the door. 2 ill-looking men entered the room. Mr. Arthur Chichester, said one. He isn't here. We don't know him. My name is Davis. Ask the landlady if it is not, cried Chichester hurriedly, in a manner which only served to convince the officer that he was right. Come, none of that there gammon, said the bailiff. I know you well enough. My name's Garnell, and I'll stand the risk of your being Chichester. Here's execution out against you for £447. I don't suppose that you can pay, so you'd better come off at once. Where to? Demanded Chichester, seeing that it was no use disputing his own identity any longer. "Where to?" cried the officer. "Why, to Whitecross, to be sure. Where the devil would you go to?" "Can I not be allowed to sleep in a sponging house?" "No, this is an execution, and a large sum, mind. I don't dare do it." "Well, then, here goes for Whitecross Street," said Chichester, and after exchanging a few words in a whisper with the baronet, he left the house with the sheriff's officers. So that's the end. So Chichester owes money. He has a debt that he's being called on, and they've come to grab him. So we'll see what happens. And I have a feeling that all of that information we got about how to cheat at cards and how to cheat at dice is going to come into play later on. I don't know where or how, but there you go. Okay, so Chichester didn't help out Richard, but he's now in trouble himself. So we'll see what happens.